Hey, it's Jamie Scrimger. When I became a stepmom, I quickly realized that while moms are encouraged to keep it real, there's a big double standard when it comes to stepmoms. So I decided to start the conversation myself. Thriving as a stepmom doesn't just come from conversations about being a stepmom, though. Here we dive into marriage, relationships, personal growth, and more. My mission? Inspire you to live a kick-ass life while bringing you along as I create my own. This is the KICK-ASS Stepmom Podcast. Co-parenting special needs children, rage text, high conflict ex, and boundaries. We are diving into all of that and more today. I have Mindy Wender on the podcast, and she is an entrepreneur, a podcast host, an autism advocate, a stepmom, a mom, and really just a great human. I was on her podcast a few months ago talking about stepmom life, and after our conversation, I was like, I gotta get you on the show. Now, as a mom and a stepmom, she has a unique perspective about blended family life, and she has a completely different co-parenting relationship with both of the exes. So her and her ex are very friendly, and she adores her ex's new partner, so the kid's stepmom. And while on the other side, her husband's ex-wife, it is definitely a more high conflict situation. She also has two special needs children, so she talks about her attitude around co-parenting children with special needs and what people really need to understand. This is such a great conversation, and we really dive into the importance of being solution-focused when dealing with a high-conflict ex. No matter what your blended family situation looks like, I know that you're going to get something out of this episode. Mindy Wender, welcome to the podcast. Let's dive in. Mindy, welcome to the podcast. So excited to chat with you. We were on your podcast. How long ago was that? Like a couple weeks?
I think it was like a month ago, probably. Yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah, I will link that episode.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, so good. Well, when we were talking on the podcast, you were kind of touching on your step-family dynamic, and you have a lot of different dynamics that have come up that I know that people in my audience and in my community are craving conversations on. And so I was like, okay, we got to get her on. So let's do this. I think the first thing we should do is just, if you could just kind of give me a little bit of a rundown on you and your family and your dynamic, like what's your story? And then we'll dive in from there.
Yeah. Okay. So I went through a divorce, I don't know, like 5 years ago. And I was like that girl, like that toxic, independent girl, like I'm single forever. I'm not doing this anymore. And that lasted maybe 6 months where I met my now husband and we started dating. Our kids, he has 2 biological children and I have 3 biological children. Part of the reason though, why I was like, I want to be single forever is because I do have 2 special needs kids. So that plays a big role in like, we're already protective as mothers. And then when you throw in like special needs and trying to have somebody else like get involved, it's just scary. But anyway, so now we have a blended family. So I have 2 stepkids now, and I have my 3 children. And so I deal with being the bio mom and the stepmom.
Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting dynamic. Do you feel, well, I guess you kind of went into this blended family dynamic from both perspectives, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you had no experience with it before. And you have 2 very different co-parenting relationships from what you've told me.
Okay. So the 2 different dynamics that I experience is, okay, so like my ex-husband and I, it's not like we're best friends. I don't want to like put a front on, but we get along. And he started dating very soon after our divorce as well. And he's engaged to that girl. And she's a sweetheart. Like, I guess, again, because of special needs, she like really took my children on with open arms. So it really made me like appreciate her and respect her. Like the fact that she just jumped into this dynamic. And so like when she was taking my kids to the pool or she's, you know, getting them birthday gifts or doing the things, instead of being like, oh, she's taking my place, how it made me feel is like, I'm so grateful that somebody jumped in and like, it's just like, oh, like, just like if it's a friend, one of my good friends who just like takes my kids in and loves my kids, I'm like, oh, I just love her. And I love that she tries with my kids. It like makes you respect people. I mean, who doesn't love when somebody loves their children, right? And like gives them so much attention and stuff.
Yeah. And what I love about what you said there is I was actually just having a podcast interview with Sarah from the Birds Papaya, and she was talking about how she had that same reaction when her ex started dating someone else. She was like, oh my God, welcome to the team. Like, so pumped that you're here. And it was just like an extra support.
Yeah. And that's really how I felt. I never had like, she's taking my place. And also, I'm not a great cook at all. And she's a great cook. So, my oldest son, who's neurotypical, no special needs, like straight, like all the things, he would come home and just, oh, Brie made me this and she made chicken pot pie and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, you got to bring some leftovers so I can try. And she like literally sent me leftovers the next time. So, it's like, I never had any of that. So, I'm very grateful because I understand where other moms do feel like that. That wasn't my experience. So when I started dating my now husband, who has 2 kids and an ex, I just was thinking, oh, she's really going to like me. Like maybe very naive to think that, but I'm just like, I'm like a great mom and I love her children and I'm doing all these things with them because we can talk about that later too, because I've really dove in on the stepmom role, like maybe too much because I wanted to do so well. Anyways, we could talk about that. But anyway, so I had just a different experience on the other side. So here I am getting along with my ex-husband and his new girlfriend, and we're all getting along just fine. And then on this side with my now husband and his situation with his ex, it was just high conflict, toxic drama. I mean, I'm sure the listeners can relate where you're like this on a text message, scrolling, because we would just get rage texts and all these things because her experience as a mom was different than my experience. And so I guess where I had a really hard time, and that's when I actually found you, Jamie, and you and your content and everything you do has just helped me so much because here I am with this side of on my situation. I thought that's just how it was going to be. So I thought I was alone. I was like, okay, this is crazy what I'm going through with my now husband and his ex. I felt like there's nobody else going through this until I found you. And then I was like, oh, wait, there's a whole community of us.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. And it's interesting, right? And this is where I speak a lot about there really is no one size fits all approach, right? There's so many contributing factors to the step family dynamic. And, I'll get these messages, those viral posts where everyone's like in the matching jerseys or like, this is, the co parenting friends and all the things. And I'll get people forward them and say, this is how it should be. I'm like, yeah, no shit. However, there are a lot of things that need to come into place. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen. There's a lot of personalities that need to be part of that dynamic. Like it's harder to create than you think. And I think a lot of stepmoms will feel guilty. I really thought that I would be like having wine and like being so close and like all the things. And like, we've had wine, we've done the things, we've had great times, but we don't have that co-parenting relationship that I really wanted and I really thought we would have. And you end up having to accept that, right? Like there's almost like shame around it. And then there's like grief around it. And then it's like, okay, like how do we thrive in this situation?
100%. It's like you have a blueprint in your head and expectations in your head of how you think it should go because it's almost to me, and maybe you disagree, but it's almost toxic the way that society and social media is just like the happy, trendy co-parenting situation because that's not normal. And I would love to normalize it, but we shouldn't shame the people who just don't have that dynamic. People get divorced because they weren't getting along. So it's like, why are we expecting? Why is the expectation now that we're supposed to all have this trendy co-parenting, all going to Disney World, matching blended family t-shirts? That's like the 1%ers. And that is amazing. And I love that. And I had that same idea in my head that it was just going to be this happy-go-lucky thing, especially from my other experience on my own side. And it just doesn't have to be one size fits all. And it doesn't have to be that. And we shouldn't be shamed if it's not.
Yeah, 100%. I don't remember when Instagram came out and everyone had the like super clean kitchens and everything was perfect on Instagram and all of that. And I was like, yeah, that's great if you have that. Like I have that, like I'm pretty clean in my kitchen, like 50, 60% of the time. And like, that's when I take my photos. But I had people message me and be like, okay, your kitchen makes me feel like shit, right? Like it makes me feel like I'm not measuring up, but it's like almost like the step parenting, narrative of this like happy, super friendly, we're best friend co-parenting relationship is like the kitchen of like 10 years ago, right? Of Instagram or 8 years ago.
The highlight reels.
Yeah. Well, there is even these creators, like that is the highlight reel too of the co-parenting relationship. Like everyone does have their stuff. And you wonder how many people in these co-parenting relationships are actually struggling, right? They're actually struggling to find their place or find their voice or whatever. Like behind the scenes, there's always stuff. And I don't think we should minimize that either. But there are these creators who they started a stepmom mom blog and they were like best friends. Then they like moved in together and then doing it all. And it was like their whole platform. And then all of a sudden it was just one of them on the platform, right? Like I do think in order to have that relationship and to like really solidify it, you need to give it time and like go through the ebbs and flows of everyone finding their place in this role. And at the end of the day, when you have that, that's great. But I think there's a lot of people at the very beginning who are like, yeah, we're like best friends. And then like shit hits the fan. And then it's like, oh, this is hard.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I definitely, probably that's why I had a little bit of those expectations because I think I know who you're talking about and I followed them and before I found you. And that's great for them and all that stuff. But I actually shared this with you on my podcast is the fact that my ex and I do get along and I love his fiance and everything. Just because I'm telling you guys that we get along, we're not the matching t-shirts going on vacation together. I'm not saying that we never will, but I actually protect what we do have. And so I don't want to go cross that line of that we're all going to dinners together and we're all, doing all these things because what if there is a reason that we are divorced? So if we spend too much time together, I would just hate if there was a falling out and that wrecked the amazing co-parenting situation that we have for our children. So there's just something to be said about that too. Like, I don't want to force it or go even to that point because, what if it all gets wrecked?
Well, yeah, there's something to be said about having those boundaries in place too, even when you have that healthy co-parenting relationship. So say you guys are getting along really well. You had a great time at the hockey tournament or whatever. And then I think some people are like, oh, we can have that relationship. And it's like, okay, let's do family dinners. Let's do a family vacation. And then you get there and you're like, okay, that's when shit hits the fan, right? Like, I think it's good when you have those boundaries in place and without having that pressure that that's how it's going to be. Like I was again just on a podcast interview the other day and he was talking about their healthy co-parenting relationship. He's like, we get along, we respect each other, we have conversations when we need to. We're not best friends though. We have an amazing co-parenting relationship, but we're not best friends. And that's okay too, right? Like there's going to be this whole spectrum. And I like that. Like you can talk when you need to talk, but you do have your separate lives. And I do think that's good for the kids too.
Yeah.
It's good for the kids. It's good for the new partner. You have your own kind of thing going on and everyone has their role. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Okay, guys, I'll be straight. This year has definitely been a challenging one for me. From relationship challenges to parenting challenges to things we just don't have any control over. It's just been one thing after another. And when life is really challenging, I do think it's important to take a moment, not only to process what you're going through, but also to take a moment to celebrate your wins. I fully believe that when we're focusing on all the things that are going wrong, we can't see all of the things that are going right. And therapy can be a really helpful tool for you to not only process the challenges that you're going through, but stay on track and celebrating your personal wins because there are lots of wins. Now, after taking a little break from therapy this year, I have gone back and it has really helped me have a different perspective on a lot of the things that have been affecting me in my life. Throughout my adult life, therapy has been one of the tools that I have used again and again to navigate challenging times and relationships and personal block. It's a really helpful tool for learning positive coping skills and setting boundaries, and it just empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for those who have experienced major trauma. I do really believe that everyone can benefit from therapy. So if you were thinking of starting therapy, first of all, do it. I swear by it. And second of all, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if it's not a fit, you can switch your therapist at any time for no additional charge. Take a moment to visit betterhelp.com/stepmom today and get 10% off your first month. Get some things off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/stepmom to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/stepmom. Guys, let me tell you, the last few months have literally been a whirlwind. I've had a lot going on, both personally and professionally. And my husband, Darren, has been the same. Like, our to-do list is insane with kids' appointments, getting the cottage ready for the summer, doing some property rental stuff, dealing with business things. It is endless. And so staying in the loop and up to date on everything that we have going on has been a huge challenge. That's where Coupla comes in. This is an app that is designed to help couples manage their time and their responsibilities more effectively so that you can focus on what really matters, each other. So, with a shared calendar and a to do list, which is super helpful, and reminders, and then also a date planner and a chat, Coupla has everything that you need to keep your life organized and balanced. And Couples Calendar actually keeps you both on the same page because you need to remember pick up and drop off and your next weekend getaway and to-do lists and date planners. Like, it is all in there. And then with the built-in chat, you can coordinate and communicate seamlessly about all of the stuff going on in your world. It's also a really great way to stay in the loop about changes in the schedule with your stepkids so that you're not blindsided by a schedule change that your partner forgot to tell you about. Has that happened to you? Because it's definitely happened to me. The good thing about this Coupla app and keeping things organized is that if you're in a busy season of life, when you do get time together, you're not spending it talking about all the things that you have to do because you're all on the same page and in the loop with everything in the shared calendar and the to-do list. So exciting news, we are offering an exclusive deal just for our listeners. Coupla is giving you 3 months free. All you have to do is use the code Jamie at checkout. That's right, 3 whole months free to see how Coupla can transform your life and your relationship. So why not take a step back from the chaos and focus on what truly matters, which is your relationship? Download Coupla today and start enjoying more quality time with your partner, because when you're together, you don't have to worry about all of the logistics. You can focus on reconnecting after the crazy busy schedule. So head to the App Store now and use the code Jamie for 3 months free for Coupla, Cupla. Trust me, you won't regret it. Coupla, Cupla, in the App Store and use the code Jamie for 3 months free. I can definitely see how it would be frustrating for you because you're like, wait, like, we can get along really well. We can have these conversations. And then I'm getting these freaking rage texts
On the other side.
from on the other side, trying to find my place here. And yeah, like, how have you protected yourself from that? Like, how have you guys set boundaries to be able to navigate that? Because it can be so draining, especially as you're trying to find your role.
Yeah, it for sure was draining. Actually, to be honest with you, Jamie, there was times that even though I'm like so in love with my now husband, actually just a little background, we dated when we were 15 years, or we met when we were 15, dated in our 20s, went our separate ways, and then got back together. It's like we have known each other, been close, we're best friends. Like, he's my person. But there still was a time, I'll tell you what, that it got so bad that I was like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, this is not for me. And this is how I've grown personally, is that before this situation came into my life, I was that girl that if it's toxic, I don't want it in my life. I'm not dealing with it. If somebody's bringing me down, like, I delete them from my life instead of being like, okay, why is this making me feel this way? What is a solution? How can we work on it? The old me was just like, nope, bye, on with my life. So it actually was good even for me personally to be like, okay, I can't just run away from every toxic situation. I mean, sometimes you have to, I'm not saying that, but in this situation, it was important to me because I loved this person and I love these kids and I wanted to make it work. So I was lost. I was stressed. I had anxiety every single day. Every single day, if it was like a pickup day or a sporting event or a thing at school, it's just like I was filled with anxiety. It was like, okay, what's going to happen today? Or there was a lot of other things, and I don't want to go into details, but like, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? That's how we lived our lives for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So how I changed that is finally I hit a point and I was like, this is the definition of insanity. We are doing the same things over and over and over and expecting different results. It's on us. We don't have control over another person, but we do have control over how we handle it and putting certain things in place. So we started with boundaries and just sharing our boundaries, or he sharing his boundaries with his ex. But then it actually got so bad that we also had to deal with courts and like write letters and do, saving text messages and documenting every single thing. So what I did was I started with one problem at a time. That's how my brain works. I have ADHD. It's just like, okay, I have to break things down to a simple form. So it's like when a problem would arise, I would sit down with that problem in that situation. And it was like a common thing. But I was like, let's just focus on today and this problem now. And I would say, what can we do about this? And that sometimes the answer was just document this. Sometimes it was like, we need to write a letter, explain the situation that's happening. And then it got so bad with the text message and stuff. And by the way, I'm a bio mom. I'm not judging. Everyone's healing at a different way and we all handle things differently. But because of these text messages to the point where it was like almost, I hate to say it, but like harassment, we had to share those text messages, write a letter, and the courts actually said, put a court order in place to know more of that. So you see, so I feel like if you are documenting things and you are in the right and you are being level-headed and you are trying to work the best way you can, my thing is I would always just lead with, what would I want done to me as a mom? How would I want somebody to handle this situation to me? And if I was doing this to my ex and I was rage texting, or I was, not showing up, or I was doing all these things, I would want somebody to make me accountable so I could be best version of myself and to be a better mom, because right now I'm not thinking clearly. So having a court order in place that would stop me from rage texting would benefit me. Even though it hurts me in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
I know it would benefit me because I'm sure that rage texting, we all know, because we've probably all done it. We rage text and it hurts us more than the other person.
Yeah, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, God,
yes.
not my shiniest moment.
Exactly. So we just put those, and by the way, I'm sure in their dynamic, if you've been through divorce, you might have that dynamic where you guys are always rage texting. So it's hard to break that cycle. So we just put things in place like that.
Mm-hmm.
For pickup, it was just like sporadic. Whenever that person felt like it, that's when the pickup would be, in all our plans and all our lives would be put on hold, which I have 3 other kids, 2 with special needs. We're busy. My entire family would be put on hold because we're living on that person's schedule. How do you fix that? Put a boundary in place. Have a set time. And if you're not there within 15-minute leeway, which obviously you can be lenient, we're humans, but it's just still structure. Finding a solution to every single problem that was occurring in our lives, finding the solution. If we had to have help with the courts, we'd have to have help because it's out of our control. And then trying to have compassion, empathy, and understanding, which was really hard for me at that time because, the kids would come back. My stepkids we just clicked right away. And I just felt such a connection to them. And they would come back and they would be sad because their mom had told them something bad about me. It was really hard for me to have compassion. Honestly, I'm just being blunt with you guys. I had a hard time in the beginning. It was really like I had anger. I had like hate in my heart. But then when I just prayed about it and I thought to myself, okay, I think you shared this on my podcast. Otherwise, I listen to all your podcasts, Jamie. So I might have heard it somewhere else. But what that person's going through, it's more about them than it is about me. And so when I kind of started wrapping my head around that, didn't happen overnight. But once I started wrapping my head around that, I could kind of show up with more compassion and understanding and bless and release the things. Like I don't have to react to every single thing. And then the last thing is we just treat the communication between these two people have to be very businesslike, very just straight to the point, polite. Because if you're not, then they think that they read between the lines and they think it's like both of them, not just her, but Joey too. They think it's like a fight. So just be very polite and straightforward and businesslike. And since we put these things in place, it's like the toxicity and the high conflict has just gone to a minimum. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not saying we don't still have to deal with things, but it was consuming our life where I was writing letters and doing all these things 24/7. And now it's like barely ever, once in a blue moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how has because you've obviously had some mindset shifts on that too, because I know so many stepmoms, whenever I post on Instagram about the power of compassion and empathy to a high conflict person or someone who's treating you like shit, no one likes that. Everyone's like, I don't have compassion for her. She's a da-da-da. She did this. She did that. How can you have compassion for someone who's blah, blah, blah? Like, I get it, like 100%. But I think when you get to the point where you look at everyone as their own person on their own journey and their own healing and their own wounds, and stop expecting people to show up the way that you're showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, stop expecting the ex to deal with something the way you would deal with it, or be at the same level as you, or be at the same place in their healing. Like, you can have that empathy. It's like, wow, like you are a hurting soul over there, right? Like, I can't imagine going through life being that angry. I can't imagine feeling that resentful all the time. Like, we have to deal with the text message, but that must be like a big bag to carry around with you all the time, and having empathy in that respect. But that doesn't mean, and like you're showing this, like you've set the boundaries, you guys decide what you will and will not tolerate. Like, you can set boundaries and also have empathy and grace, right? You can do both. And that's actually the most powerful combination.
Oh, 100% agree. It's not going to be happening overnight. I always relate everything to fitness. So I'm a wellness girly, but it's like, you're not going to the gym, getting one workout in and expecting to have your results. That's what I had to remind myself about this, because I would screw up and I would make mistakes and I would slip up where I would not have show the compassion that I should. And then I would have guilt and shame for myself of my actions. It's not an overnight thing. And it's also a daily job. Like, just because I'm doing well right now, it doesn't mean that I still have to work on myself every single day to remind myself. And I actually have a note section on my phone where I have like reminders for myself. So like, when a high conflict situation comes up where it's just like, are you serious? I go to that note section, like just reminders, like, she's doing the best she can with what she has. We're all human. Like, just, certain things to remind myself, like, take it down a notch. It is fine. And again, I'm not perfect, so I'm not trying to say I'm perfect. I screw up all the time. It's a daily job for me. And that's how I bring myself back down to where I need to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I was on a coaching call yesterday, and the stepmom, I was talking to her about like the self-talk that I do if I'm feeling triggered or I'm feeling insecure. And I was saying, like, I'll have this thought come in, and then I'm like almost like pep talking myself out of it. Like, my default is negative thinking, and as our default is negative thinking, and then we have to like bring it to the positive. She's like, wait, you're doing this work too now? I'm like, you're going to be doing it for your entire life. Like, I think people look at people who aren't struggling, or maybe who have these positive co-parenting relationships, and think everything's easy or nothing ever bugs them. It's like, no, you're going to have your reactions, you're going to have your thoughts, but it's like, how do you redirect yourself so you can show up in a way that feels good, as opposed to getting like caught up in that space. And then you do get caught up in the bullshit and like maybe you respond and like not your shiniest self. I don't know about you, but I've apologized many times where I'm like, she did A, B, and C, but like that was not okay what I just did. And I like will send an apology and just say, hey, sorry that I shouldn't have done that. That was not my shiniest moment. And there's so much power in that.
Oh, for sure. And this person still doesn't care for me or my husband, but there came a time, I think it was like a year ago, and I just was working through some things and working on things, and we have these boundaries in place or whatever. And I actually wrote her knowing that I would not get a response back because there's a lot of hate towards us. And I wrote this text message saying, I'm sorry for because it's, Jennifer Aniston said this when she came out of her relationship with Brad Pitt. they were all trying to pin everything on Brad Pitt. And she did an interview and she is so classy. We all love Jennifer Aniston. And she just responded with, I focus on what I can control and what I can do better and what I was at fault for. Even if that's 0.1%, I'm focused on the 0.1%. And so that's what I did when I crafted this text. And did I get a response back? No, but that was not why I wrote the text. My text was not for a response. My text was to forgive and ask for forgiveness for the things that had happened. It was almost like I drew the line in the sand from this point forward. This is the dynamic, at least on my end.
I love that. I think that's so great. Now, I'd love to switch gears and talk about the special needs and co-parenting, because a lot of stepmoms, well, not a lot of stepmoms, but several stepmoms in my community come to me and they're like, where's the resources on special needs? Because adds a whole other dynamic to the co-parenting relationship. So what's your advice there? What are your thoughts there? Like, I don't even know the right questions to ask, but how do you suggest that stepmoms in that situation navigate? Because I can only imagine.
It's a completely different situation. And it's almost like it makes all the BS, like all the bullshit that you're worried about and all the rage texting, it makes all of that stuff like this big when you have to deal with it. It's like you don't have time to care about that stuff. And you can't care about that stuff because in our situation, both of them, Hudson and Lily, they both have special needs. They both have autism. Just in case I didn't mention autism, I said special needs. They can speak. They're not nonverbal, but they still can't express maybe what happened at dad's house or what happened at mom's house or what happened at school. And so you got to put all of that stuff. And I know it's hard, moms and stepmoms and everybody, all parents. I know it's hard, but that is just something so much bigger than being mad at your ex or, dealing with the high conflict because you have to do it for your special needs child. And you don't have to like that person. I don't have to like my ex, but we have to have open communication. And I want to share things with him as in like a video or something. So we can both be in the loop of like, they only eat 5 foods. Let's just say Lily's on a kick if she only eats 5 things right now. And if she tries a new food, I'm texting my ex to celebrate that. So he knows to get that when he goes grocery shopping. So these things seem very small. So my son Lane is neurotypical. He'll go to his dad's and be like, oh, I want this, this, and this. And he can express that, but I have to be the voice for Lily. I have to be the voice for Hudson. I have to be that person that communicates with my ex to let him know this is what we're doing. And on top of that, a lot of special needs parents know there's a lot of doctor's appointments. There's a lot of therapies. There's just a lot of supplements sometimes. I guess it depends. When you meet one kid with autism, you meet one kid with autism because they're all different and parents do so many things different. That's just our situation. So I have to send the certain supplements or say, we don't do this supplement anymore. Or it's a must to have that communication. And I honestly think it's a blessing, Jamie, because it just puts things into perspective about what's really important. And so I see that personally with me, the 2 different situations. That's why I think my story is kind of unique because I can see, if I didn't have this situation, I might be talking to you guys like, you have to do this and maybe like axing you like it's special needs and you have special needs and you have to be the voice and you can't worry about all those things and you need to get over it. But since I have the other situation on the other side, I can fully see the full circle and how it's hard to maybe put those things into perspective because there's times I don't do it, but I do it on this side because of special needs and I have to. So that's why I say it's a blessing when I talk about my co-parenting dynamic with my ex because of special needs, because it really forces us to not focus on the BS. And it really does help my husband and I when we are dealing with things on his side of the situation where it's just like, it brings us back down to earth. Like it could be worse. We need to focus on the kids. It shows you what's really important.
On and off, I have been sharing about some of the lifestyle changes that I have made in the past year. I've been trying to minimize stress, lose some of the fluff, have a healthier lifestyle, balance my nervous system, while still being able to enjoy the good things in life. I just wanted to feel better. And so a couple of years ago, I actually made the commitment. I said, I want to go into my 40s feeling my absolute freaking best. And, I still have a year and a bit to go, but I am slowly and sustainably introducing new habits into my life. I'm feeling so good. Metabolic Balance program with Jen Vasey has been a huge game changer for me in meeting this goal. So for the longest time, it didn't matter how healthy I ate, what I did, how I moved my body, nothing was working, and I wasn't feeling good about myself. So when my girlfriend told me about Metabolic Balance for balancing hormones and sustainable weight loss, I was all in. So I have followed the program since fall 2023, and I feel great. It is all about eating for your unique body. So you get your blood tested, and then you are given a food list with foods that work best for your body. And wow, when you are eating for your unique body type, it is crazy how much better you feel. I've had a lot of success. My family members have had a lot of success. There's stepmoms in the community who have tried it and had a lot of success. So many women are seeing game-changing results with this program. And you guys know me, when I find something that I love, I just want to share it with all of you. So when Jen came on the podcast a while back to talk about the program, which we will link in the show notes for you, she gave a code for listeners. So if you want to give this program a try, if you want to create some change in your life, you can use the code KICK-ASS Stepmom, or just tell her that I sent you during your first call, and she's going to give you $100 off the investment. So that is Jen Vasey. She is a holistic nutritionist and Canada's #1 metabolic coach. She is unreal. You work with her to get a customized nutrition plan for simplified weight loss and hormonal balance. To learn more about Jen and the program, head to www.jen.rhn.com or look up Jen the RHN on Instagram. Again, this is hands down the best investment I have made in myself and my health. www.jen.rhn.com and use the code KICK-ASS Stepmom for $100 off. Now, what about a stepmom who comes in and is trying to figure out their role in this and trying to, navigate that relationship with the mom? Because I know a lot of stepmoms will struggle when there's like this constant communication back and forth with the ex. How would you explain that to them in this type of situation to not feel super, maybe even insecure about it?
Yeah. And I get that. I get the insecure thing. You just never know, and you want to be in the loop. So what I personally do as the biological mom, so I'll talk both sides, but what I do as mom is a lot of the times I will include both of them, and we do like a 3-way text. So it's like track and field day was for Hudson was the other day. Yeah, the other day. So I texted both of them the information about that. And I texted both of them the video of Hudson doing it. By the way, you have to see that video. He never participates in anything, and he participated in track and field, and he had so much joy on his face. I was just like, oh my God. So anyways, I shared that in a group text because I feel like, and that evolved. That didn't happen right away. And I did that in a group just because she loves my kids too. And I want to share this information with her, and she goes to their events too. So I just think it's easier. And then it makes her feel included. It's not like just him and I are talking about the kids and leaving her out. But there are some times where I don't do that, like where it's just about, texting, certain things to just Brad. But that's just one tip to include or ask your husband to say, hey, can we all be included? Can I be included on the text? And then the other thing is on the other side is I just ask, I think it's out of respect. And we both do this on either side. My husband and I, we have full access to each other's phones. It's not like we're sitting there every single night checking, I actually forget his password most of the time, but I have access to it because it just makes me feel more comfortable and it makes him feel more comfortable. And any single time, no matter what, that I get a text from my ex or that he gets a text from his ex, we show each other, let them know. And that was more in the beginning, by the way. Now it's kind of just like, oh, I forgot to tell you, but it's not that I'm hiding it and it's not that he's worried, but like we just started off with that boundary of like, let's just start this relationship off being completely open. I'll show you everything I get from my ex. You do the same, we're starting a family, a blended family together. Let's all be on the same page. So it wasn't like a jealousy thing and it wasn't I guess probably it was an insecurity thing, but it's also like a building trust thing and just making the other person feel comfortable and at ease.
And it's a good habit, right? To get into, because a lot of times I think there's this like back and forth communication or like a schedule change or things are coming up. And then you're like, I didn't know about the schedule change. Like, what do you mean? She's like, oh shit, I forgot to tell you. Right. But if you get into that space, if you get into that habit of just like having that open and honest communication about the correspondence, I think it makes everyone just feel a little bit more comfortable. Not that it's a trust thing, but it's just literally like, can we just all be on the same page?
Right. And maybe it is a trust thing. Maybe because I've talked to some other stepmoms online and they're like, well, my husband wasn't sharing things with me at the beginning, not because he was hiding things. He just, well, I didn't think of anything. Or maybe it's because, well, I didn't want you to get mad. It's not like he did anything wrong, but she wrote something that was whatever. And I didn't want you to get mad. So I didn't show you. So it might be a trust thing in the beginning.
True. Yeah.
Whatever it is, it just helps. It just helps. I feel like it's a no-brainer. It's easy. And if somebody doesn't want to do that, I don't know. I kind of feel like that's a red flag. If somebody doesn't want to
Well, you know what I think is a red flag is when stepmoms are worried that they're going to get back together or that there's going to be like the connection and like legitimately worried, not just like a thought, like an intrusive thought creeps into your head, but like when they're at an event with the kids. And like, to me, I feel like if I was worried that my husband was going to leave me, there's something deeper here, right? Like, I don't know. That sometimes kind of like creeps up as a big red flag for me too. Like when my husband goes over, there was a time when my stepson, his mom needed some reinforcement to deal with him, right? Like she needed dad to come in to be the heavy. And that doesn't happen all the time. But Darren went over there to be like, look, your mom and I don't always get along, and that's totally fine, but you are not going to disrespect her. You are not going to do this in this house. Like this is done now, and kind of like went into her house and like was the heavy. I think someone asked me, it's like, do you ever worry like when they're together that like I'm like, no, like nothing does not ever pop into my mind. So I do think, if those insecurities are popping up, it's like, okay, there's a deeper issue to dive into here as well.
Yeah. And that might be because of your husband may have made you feel that way, or maybe it's from the past. But just like when I told you guys, when I was sharing how I was like, delete out of my life, don't want this toxic, it's almost like I was toxic positivity. Like, don't want any toxic behavior, don't want toxic people. I mean, that sounds so normal, but sometimes you got to figure out why you're feeling that way. So this situation made me look inside to be like, okay, I need to deal with these things. I can't just brush them under the rug and delete people out of my life. That's no way to live my life. And so with that said, that's kind of like the same thing. It's just like, what's going on here? Instead of running away from it or putting a label on the feeling, we label the feeling like, I don't have trust issues. I think he's going to leave me. But it's really like probably deeper than that. We're just labeling it as that one thing.
I know. That's why I'm all about like diving into your childhood wounds and the stories you've been telling yourself and the wounds from past relationships. Because when you can really identify where those triggers come from, like, so a lot of the triggers that have come up for me as a stepmom are actually other triggers from my life that are like, I haven't fully healed. And then it's like almost like you pick the scab, right? When it happens in your step family life, like the belonging wound, like worthiness wound, feeling like an outsider. Like I could go on and on about all of the stuff from my childhood or from, my past relationship that like has crept into my current marriage. And if I didn't do the work on myself to be able to be like, oh, this is what's going on here, I don't think I'd be married. Right? Like, I think I would be like, screw this, toxic relationships. Like a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm out. I don't want anyone who's toxic in my life. But like, then you do lose out on a little bit of like that beauty and the problem solving too. Right. And that grace you can give people and go, yeah, we have a hard relationship, but there's some beautiful stuff in it too. So I'm going to choose to participate in this beautiful stuff. And then when it gets a little dark, put my boundaries up. Right. Like, you don't have to be like super close and super hearts and sparkles with everyone to have a relationship with them or to have a healthy relationship with them.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And the other thing what's so great about what you do for this community is it's hard to do that by yourself. But like having a community, like I said, I thought I was alone. There's nobody else this crazy. Nobody else is dealing with the crazy that I'm dealing with. It's insane. Then I'm like, found you and your community. I'm like, oh, there's a whole village of us
Totally
dealing with this stuff. But also the fact that what you're saying to like go back to those childhood wounds and like, it's hard to kind of do that by yourself. So it's nice to have somebody like to walk you through the reframing of situations. Like if a bad situation happens, what I do is I journal about it and stuff like that. But like having somebody like you to walk you through, coach you through, and tell you, hey, it might not be this one thing. It's just like mind blowing what can change in your life.
Have you read Vienna Farron's book? It's like The Origin Wounds.
No, I have not.
Probably the best personal development book I've read.
Really? Okay.
I normally get through like a personal development book, like I'm like halfway through and I'm like, okay, I got it. Like I got the point. You know how they get a little long? Or I like listen to it on audiobook, but I read that one all the way through. She was on the podcast. Her work is transformational. And she talks about all of these wounds from our childhood and how they show up in our current relationships if we don't work through them. And yeah, it's interesting. You know, Darren's into the personal development work. He's really into the mindset and like all of that. I'm definitely more because I'm always like, let's do this. And he goes, okay, why don't you go manifest that then? Okay, Jamie. And I was like, I do manifest things and they do come true. He does believe that too. But I'm like, what are your origin wounds? What are your childhood wounds? He's like, I don't know. And he just like doesn't think that way. So I know that so many people are like almost reluctant to dive into that because the way we look at our childhood, you want to be like, it was amazing. Like everything was great. My parents were great. And doing this work doesn't mean you have to have this traumatic childhood or these shitty parents or like these big traumas in your life. But we do have these like little traumas that show up each and every day. You know, maybe you felt left out on the playground or you remember this like incident with, you know, friends or something happened, you know, you felt like you really had to be perfect for your parents. There was a lot of pressure, like whatever. Right? It doesn't mean when we're going back and doing this work, it's like a stab on our parents. It's literally like we're screwing our kids up too right now, right? Like everyone's going to have their stuff, but just diving into how that shows up into your current life is just so powerful. So anyway, read the book. It's a good one.
I will. I love that. And then another book that's really good, especially for like a stepmom that might be going through, you just feel out of place or you feel maybe a little insecure, is the book Worthy by Jamie Kern Lima. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I haven't read that.
It's so good. It's like, you don't have to be X, Y, and Z. You're still worthy just the way you are. And it really will transform your life. It's such a good book.
I love that. All right. So the last thing I want to dive into is on our podcast episode, when we were on your show, we were kind of talking about, I think we were talking about it live or maybe we were talking about it off mic, but just maybe the ex's thoughts that you might be overstepping and how to navigate your role while having that high conflict ex in the background who feels like you're overstepping, but you want to show up as the type of stepmom you want to be there for your stepkids, but then you're dealing with that. How have you navigated that? Because it's a tricky place to be in.
It is. And especially, you know, maybe you guys look at me and think, well, you're a mom and you have to deal with like a stepmom on the other side. So you probably have more understanding. I don't, because I don't experience any of those things. I don't feel that way with Brad's fiance, but it definitely has come up a lot on the other side. So at first I felt like I was walking on eggshells. Like everything I do, I couldn't do anything right. It was like during 2020 when we all kind of got together and like we were already dating, but like really like merged our families. It was 2020. So it's like I'm homeschooling these kids at the end when they're on, you know, our time, our 7 days on. It's like I'm homeschooling these kids and I would get calls, or I should say Joey would get calls saying I didn't do the preschool homework correctly. I'm like, dude, preschoolers don't have homework. But like, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't do anything right. So I really had high anxiety around anything I did. And then what I realized through that whole 2020 year, crazy year, is that I just have to show up as a stepmom. Like at the beginning, kind of thought of myself, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, and I don't mean this as I'm not a stepmom, but I was like, I'm a glorified aunt. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I feel like stepmoms are moms. Like I'm their mom. Like I really do think I'm their stepmom. But it's just like I show up a little differently than their biological mom. You know what I mean? They need something different from me than they get from her. And I never saw myself as anything else. It's she saw me as trying to take her role. But I was just being a mom. I have 3 of my own kids and they're my kids now too. And, you know, I'm just being there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just made sure that I was always aware of what I was doing and aware of my words. And not that I felt like I was walking on eggshells anymore, because it's different. Like I just had this shift in my mindset and I reframed the situation of how I felt about it and how I saw the situation. And I just showed up as, they call me Minnow. It's my nickname. I just showed up as their Minnow. Like I'm just Minnow and I am like a guardian and I am your mom and I'm this. But when they want something else, that's their mom's role. Like it's just yesterday this happened. One of the boys brought some art projects home and he was just like, oh, I got these art projects. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a bulletin board and we're going to like hang it outside your and Lennon's room and you guys can share that, display your art. And I was really excited about it. And then he's like, oh, okay. So like, if you don't like all the art though, my mom loves our art projects. So do you think that I could give some to her? And I was like, dude, if your mom likes your art projects, bring them all over to her house. I mean, for sure, ask your dad. Because again, anything they ask me, I'm like, let's talk to dad about that. Let's ask your mom that. You know, I mean, obviously, as you know, you can make decisions of
like redirecting it.
Yes, exactly. And so I'm like, dude, if your mom likes the artwork, let's just give it to mom. That will make her day and blah, blah, blah. Or if you want to be fair, split it in half. Do what you want to do once you talk to dad about it. And obviously, Joey, my husband, said the same thing. But that's how I talk to them in hopes that, I just feel like if that's my energy, because if you're being fake, by the way, you guys, if I showed up fake, like, oh, yes, let's get like, I don't know. I feel like your energy and your intentions will come through. Like that person, the ex will feel that. I know I can feel it if somebody's fake. I can't do fake. So just as long as you're showing up authentically with the right intentions and the right mindset and you're trying to do well and you're trying to do your best as a stepmom and they don't take it the right way, that's on them. We can't take that personally, but just keep working on it. And eventually I feel like your intentions will come through. Like me with the artwork, I'm sure that they'll go and say, oh, well, Minnow said, if you really like it, we'll bring it to your house. And she probably won't care about that, to be honest, but that's okay. As long as I'm doing my part.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. This has been so interesting because again, the two different co-parenting relationships, same person, different dynamics. I think it's really telling, right? And it can help a lot of stepmoms just take that pressure off if like, it's just not in the cards for them kind of thing. So good.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is that the expectations thing too, I think that is the biggest thing. That is my biggest pet peeve. Don't compare yourself to, even if you look at my stuff, don't compare yourself to my dynamic. Like, look how different mine is than yours, Jamie. It's just that we all just have to put almost like if it's affecting you, put blinders on, unless you're in your community, then you feel like, okay, I found my people. That's great. But otherwise just put blinders on if you're not there yet to look at the outside, because I was not ready. And I found that podcast that you were referring to before. And I was just like, I'm failing. I suck. I'm the worst. And that's what I internalized by that, because I'm like, this is never going to be me. And I would send these episodes to my now husband, Joey, and he'd be like, who would want this? I'm like, he's so right. Like, that's just not our dynamic. We don't even want that.
Sometimes we think we want something. And then when we like get it, or if we like actually think about it, we're like, no, I actually don't want that.
Yeah.
Like I really don't want that. Because we were talking about that with Christmas once. Because at one point I went on to invite my stepkid's mom for Christmas. And my stepkids later were like, no, like that would be terrible. But I had said that at the very beginning. I'm like, maybe we should do Christmas together. And Darren was like, no. And then years later, I'm like, I actually didn't want that because I felt like I was supposed to want that, right? Like, no, I don't want that. I'm so glad we have our own traditions now.
Yes. Oh my God, I can so relate to that.
All right, Mindy, where can everyone find you?
Oh, okay. So you can find me on Instagram. It's at Mindy Wender. And then my website is mindywender.com. I'm just like Mindy Wender everywhere.
Love it. Love it. Love a good brand under your name. And you have a podcast, Pimp It Out.
Oh yeah. And then I have a podcast. It's personal growth, lifestyle, family, kids, parenting, all the things. It's called Obsessed or Not Interested.
I love it. And that's a good one. All right. Thanks, Mindy, for coming on the show. I think we'll have to do this again.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jamie.
That's it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you could share it with someone in your life who you think could benefit from it. And if you haven't already left a rating and a review on iTunes, it really is the best way to support the show. And if you're craving more real talk and coaching and community, be sure to check out my membership, the KICK-ASS Stepmom community. Head to www.kickassstepmom.com to learn more.